On 670 The Score, they're discussing what is different about this offseason compared to the last couple for the Bears. Robert Mays is on it. He has one of the better football podcasts called The Athletic Football Show. We're going to watch a little bit and then discuss.
I guess that's the beauty of being able to talk to you in studio today is since we last left you, so many different things have happened with this Bears team, whether it's trading for Jonah Jackson, Joe Thuney, whether it's adding to the line the way they did, the draft, just your impressions of it all. So I guess the first thing that comes to mind when you think of this offseason for you is what?
Aggressive. And not necessarily in a bad way. I think that they showed a lot of urgency, whether that comes with the chase for Ben Johnson, getting Ben Johnson, going out and getting Dennis Allen. I mean, these are like big swings of the sort that I've wanted them to take for a long time. I think that this organization at its most frustrating is full of half measures. And I think there weren't a lot of half measures this offseason in a way that you can appreciate. And you can extend that to the player acquisition part of it. Like doing what they did along the offensive line before free agency even started and then planting a flag with Drew Dahlman. I think that they really wanted you to know that it was going to be a little bit different this year in terms of them shoring up some of those issues they've had over the last couple seasons. And I appreciate that. You know, it comes with risk. When going out and getting a guy like Jonah Jackson who's been hurt, you're paying a lot of money for him. The contract for Grady Jarrett, who's an aging player, is aggressive. But I think they've really kind of planted a flag, and it's a declaration of intent about what they want this season to be.
Okay. I think what Robert says is inherently like so true to what this offseason was. Because we've seen in the past, the Bears between Ryan Poles less, but more Ryan Pace is like, they'll go out and they'll spend money. But there's very obvious areas of the roster. There's very obvious sections of the team that are just, we'll just deal with it in the season. We'll move people around. We'll figure it out. And the Bears really didn't do that this year. The Bears went out. They paid a first-time head coach more money than they've ever paid a coach. The O-line that has been kind of, a shit show for a long time now. Like, now different levels of shit show for sure, right? Like, sometimes it's much worse than others, but Bears fans have experienced a lot of bad O-line play. They go out, they trade for Joe Thuney, who is one of the best guards in the NFL still, has winning experience. They go out and get a guy that Ben Johnson has worked with before for dirt cheap, a 6th-round pick. Yes, he's had injury. They moved him around last year. Yes, he's expensive. But at the end of the day, we talk about consistently, you got to invest in the O-line. Got to invest in the trenches. So if they're spending money there, okay. It's fine with me. And then on top of that, the Bears could have very easily said, you know what? We added 2 good guards. We don't need to splurge on the center. We don't need to pay top dollar for the center. But they did it anyway. They went ahead and said, you know what? We have neglected this for so long. We cannot have any more excuses. Now, outside of the left tackle position, where it's more to me as if Braxton Jones is healthy, whether he'll be the starter or if, then if he gets beat out by Ozzie Trapillo. I think it's an open competition. I think Braxton has the leg up personally, especially this year, being his last year and him being a vet, him playing on that line. But I think what Robert is saying at the end of the day is they just went out and did it. Like, we cannot now, regardless if you agree with every single move that they made, you can't go out and say that they didn't do what I would say a majority of fans wanted. The Bears went ahead and they went and got Dahlman. They went and got Ben Johnson. While they didn't go and get Ashton Genty in the draft, they added playmakers and then also used 2 second-round picks on trench players. Now, I know people wanted running back, everything like that, but at the end of the day, I think the Bears offseason, without sounding corny because we're offseason champs for the 3rd time in a row, and we've all seen how that's went in the past, I think they won the offseason without the feeling of, yeah, they won the offseason, but can they put it together? Like, I think they can put it together. I think this is the offseason that just feels right. Like, even the last offseason, okay, yeah, they made some cool moves, whatever, this, that, and the third. They got Rome, they got Caleb. But I think deep down, Bears fans were always like, yeah, but I don't know.
Okay, so you're talking about the intent, and I'm with you on all of that. There seems to be some holes, though, that we're still trying to plug on this roster. I'm curious as to, as you see this conversation, especially where it comes to running back, where we thought that the Bears might possibly either trade up or Ashton Genty at one point might fall to them, to you're taking the 22nd running back selected in the draft. What did you think about that process? And are you okay with what they have right now in the running back room?
I think so. I'm curious what the Roschon Johnson role looks like in this offense, because I think when you look at the difference between DeAndre Swift and maybe the sort of back they would chase, I think it's a little bit about consistency, making sure you have somebody that, all right, if it's blocked for 5, he's getting 5. They don't really have that guy if Roschon Johnson isn't that guy. But if they conceive of him being better in this offense than he was in the previous one, and they're just rolling with him, I support that. Also, there are still guys available. If they wanted to potentially sign a Nick Chubb, something like that, I don't really mind them bypassing the position in the draft, just because I think after a certain point, you're probably making a move that is sort of lateral. And I think as you get past the 3rd, 4th round, those are probably the types of guys who are available. So I can understand them not feeling overly ambitious when it comes to addressing that spot.
And I think, and just to kind of piggyback off that, I do think once Judkins and Henderson went off the board, I think the Bears were in a position where it was like, if there's a back we really like available at the pick we take, at the pick where we don't have to trade up, then we'll take one. And I think after Henderson went in the 2nd, right before they picked Luther Burden, I think it got to the point where it's like, you know what? We have a pretty good roster, and this is a deep class. Let's not force it. And I'm looking back on it, and I felt this way during the draft too. I really wanted Genty, and I was let down. Like I did want Genty, but I also had the mindset of like, if we don't get Genty, it's not the end of the world. Like the real talk is spending to get Genty would be fun, and it would help the Bears. But it's not the smartest move, and that's the reality of it. I still like the idea. Monangai is not Ashton Genty whatsoever. But I know he's a 7th round running back. But I'm pretty optimistic on Monangai. I've liked him since he's been at Rutgers. He did it in the Big Ten. And with how the Bears addressed this offseason, I mean, running back and linebacker are like, those are the positions I would say of need on this team a lot. I mean, obviously you need pass rush, but like I'm talking about more like non-high value positions. I'm okay with the Bears really kind of not touching them after how this offseason has went.
And shouldn't at some point in time, like we want gold at every position, but if Ben Johnson is what everybody thinks he is and he's being paid like a star coach, shouldn't we expect Ben Johnson to get more out of DeAndre Swift, to get more out of Roschon Johnson as well, especially with that interior that you mentioned at the beginning?
Yeah, and I also just think that if you're going to skimp on a certain position, running back is still probably the one that's worth skimping on. I think it's about building up the infrastructure around the running game as much as it is about finding the right running back. And you can't just ignore what they spent on DeAndre Swift last year. We can talk about whether that was smart, but you're still allocating a decent amount of resources to the position based on how the last offseason or two has gone.
And it felt like DeAndre Swift, like people forget, and I was in on it, like it felt like a good signing. I mean, for the most, I don't know how you felt about it.
I did not feel that way.
Okay, but
Why was that?
I was on day one signing a guy who the Eagles decided they didn't want and had just been in that ecosystem for the entire year. That to me felt like something you didn't need to do on day one of free agency.
It's like when the Steelers like trade receivers. It's like, if they're selling, maybe don't buy. I don't know. I liked the Swift signing but it felt like cope. You know, like once I heard we were in on Saquon, I was like, let's do it. Like, a ton of help for Caleb Williams if we get Saquon. Now, the offensive line, I don't know. But this is probably Swift's last year on the team. It's $8 million a year. It's not anything insane. I would rather not spend the money there with him. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And I forgot to touch on the Roschon Johnson point. It's very true that this coaching staff can get more out of him. But in my opinion, I just think Monangai offers more. Like, I've never been a big Roschon Johnson fan. I don't really understood what he would bring to an offense. Now, Monangai, to me, I think is a little bit quicker, like in the short area, like agility. I mean, neither of these guys are speedsters. I just think there's more dynamicism. Monangai is a more dynamic runner, in my opinion. And I don't know after this year how much room there's going to be for Roschon Johnson. I think in 2026, we're going to see a greatly, greatly different running back room.
They did get Saquon, though. I mean, they went for the best of the best.
I think that the fact that DeAndre Swift had been traded, multiple teams, 2 teams in the last 2 off seasons had decided they didn't need DeAndre Swift anymore. And you look at what he did in Philadelphia, it was fine. I think we have a lot of evidence, this year included, that the Eagles have the best rushing infrastructure in the entire NFL. So what he did there, even if it was okay, I think is a little bit of a false premise. And so that was the first move of free agency. It was truly the first thing that happened that day was the Bears signing DeAndre Swift. It's like, I'm not sure we needed to be this aggressive with this particular move.
Robert, I think your point stands specifically about it being a tell because the Eagles' offensive line is phenomenal and has been phenomenal for years on years. So to see what people said was, oh, that was good production. Good isn't good enough sometimes when you're looking at what you're working with. And so that's why I was like, I don't know that I'm on board like everybody else. I think what happens here in Chicago, and you can speak to this because you're not only just a guy who knows football, but has that connection with the Bears fandom, is understanding that just because your team made a move doesn't mean you have to agree with it or subscribe to it or be like, yeah, go team.
I don't think that's how you should approach it. I think that being a little bit skeptical and understanding that every move comes with certain downside, certain upside, and trying to see it through that lens is important. And, you should have a certain amount of expectations when it comes to how your team operates. Are they doing the right things? Are they making the right bets? And for a while, I think the answer to that was no in this town way too often. I will say that this offseason, I think the answer has been yes more often than not.
Just to quickly comment on that, I think that's the main thing that feels different about this offseason. Regardless if these moves work out. Like, if they work out or they don't work out, at least we felt like they were the right decisions at the time. I cannot remember. I can't count on one hand, probably. Maybe 2 hands. Probably 1 hand. In the last couple years, when the Bears have made decisions where I'm just like, yup. There we go. Like Caleb Williams, like, I can't even give you credit for that. Like, I think Caleb Williams is a good player. I think he will be a good quarterback. I think it was the right choice to take him. But I think a lot of people would have come to that conclusion, regardless if you're the worst fucking franchise in the world or the best franchise in the world. Decisions where it's a little bit more in the gray area, I can't count on my hand how many times I've really agreed with what the Bears have done. And this offseason, I'm like, yep, makes sense. So that's probably the main difference to me, is I don't have to sell myself on their decision making anymore. Like, I just kind of agree with it.
We discussed a question that I know is in the ecosystem of the Athletic Football Show, trying to figure out whose draft it was. How do we figure out Ben Johnson's thumbprint on this? We saw it in the first round pick, there's no doubt. Just played some audio from Colston Loveland this morning on with Mully and Haw talking about his injury with Michigan. We also asked the question, though, if it really was that much different from what you've seen out of a Bears draft, because I still feel like there were some reaches, there was some zigging when other teams would zag. There were still some, I think, Ryan Poles-esque picks in this thing.
Yeah, it's hard to know where to separate the responsibility for some of that stuff. I think with Ben Johnson specifically, and the first 2 draft picks specifically, it's kind of easy to see the imprint. Even in the process, when we were talking about Colson Loveland on our show, it was like, that just souped up Sam Laporta. That's what he is. And so the fact that Ben Johnson liked him is not surprising. And the Luther Burden part of this, if you go back and you look at just the production the Lions offense had last year, and specifically the way they used Jamison Williams more than anything else, I think that Ben Johnson is a real believer in the way that run after catch plays into modern NFL offense. He's talked so much this offseason about how passing efficiency is the biggest indicator of whether you're going to win or lose. If you look at the construction of that passing game in Detroit, they were not throwing the ball down the field. That's not how they were efficient. They were creating a lot of run after catch opportunities. And so now you bring in a guy in Luther Burden, that's what he does.
Isn't that also what DJ Moore?
So just to kind of comment on that quickly, Luther Burden in the 2023 season at Mizzou, if you do 50% minimum targets, so it's like if you have 85 targets in all of college football, Luther Burden was 2nd in yards after catch and 4th in yards after catch per reception. Luther Burden is elite with the ball in his hands after the catch. And quickly about the draft, I would even argue that the Ozzie Trapio pick is a Ben Johnson pick, especially if you look at Taylor Decker in Detroit. So I think this draft was pretty much Poles just getting Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen their guys. And there's nothing wrong with that because Poles did the same thing for Eberflus. I think, though, Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen are a lot more sure on the type of guys that they want. I think Matt Eberflus had an idea of what he wanted, but I think he was way more willing to bend because he is not as confident in himself as a coach to get these players. Whereas I think Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen can walk into a room, talk to Poles and say, this is what I want. This is exactly what I need. I think they have a little bit more pull there.
Or does too, though.
It's interesting that I totally agree with that. And that was my first reaction when I saw that they drafted Luther Burden. It's just like, this feels like it's a little bit of an overlap. But my understanding after talking to people post that pick was we want it all to feel pretty interchangeable. Like we want guys who can play a variety of roles. And if you look at just the way the offenses are structured in the NFL now, the amount of condensed formations really kind of blurs the line between who's in the slot and who's not. And so having guys that have potentially redundant skill sets when you can move everyone around, I think that it's a little bit less of a worry because when you consider it like, all right, this is an outside guy, this is an inside guy. Then in that situation, if you have 2 guys that do the same thing, it's more of a problem. But if guys are a little bit more blurred and versatile within the offense, I think it becomes less of a problem. And I think that's kind of how they're conceiving of it.
So
that is a big thing in what Johnson's philosophy is. If you watch his press conference, he wants to make the same things, different things look the same and the same things look different, if that makes sense. I think I'm not butchering it, but basically he wants to confuse the defense, and having players that can do the same things as other players and have them in might not tee off a defense on what they're about to do.
Weapons, they're there now. No one's arguing that the weapons aren't in place for Ben Johnson to do what he does as a play caller. The biggest question I have is the motor of this whole thing in Caleb Williams, and what do we expect to see out of him this season that we didn't last year? I know it's a new offense he's got to pick up. It's obviously a play caller that everyone's going to be looking at. If Caleb Williams doesn't produce like he should, or like a Ben Johnson offense has in the past 3 years or so, then people are going to be looking at him, not Ben Johnson, correct?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think because you've given him everything you can hope to give him now. The offensive line, we'll see how it all gels, but the personnel should be there to at least be a reliable unit. And you combine that with the pass catchers, and then to me, it's the relationship with the play caller and the offensive coordinator. You look at what happened last year, and it just never worked. There was never any sort of synergy between what Shane Waldron wanted to do and what Caleb Williams wanted to do. And I've come back to this a lot this offseason, but I sat down with Jared Goff last summer, and we're just going over a bunch of different stuff. But it's kind of a wide-ranging conversation about him and that offense and how it operated and why he made certain decisions. And we probably went through a dozen plays just sitting in an office in Detroit. I was like, why did you do this? And him explaining to me how his mind was working and how he understood the intention of every play to such a degree. I was like, how do you get there? Like, how do you know to get to the check down immediately like that? And to him, it was all going back to the dialogue with Ben all the time. Just like, I understand what we're trying to accomplish in any given situation because of what he's telling me. And I think that's, to me, a marker of really good offenses in the NFL. When the quarterback understands the intent of the play because the play caller and the staff have communicated that to them, you feel that way. That's what the good offenses do, and I think that's what Ben Johnson has consistently done.
What do you?
I think last year a big thing with Shane Waldron is I don't think he had that confidence to know what he really wanted to do himself. And then having a guy like Caleb who's looking for structure, like people can make the argument that Caleb held onto the ball too long, took too many sacks. It wasn't because necessarily, in my opinion, that he's running around trying to make all these plays. There's some places he's running for his life. Yeah, for sure. But there's a lot of times where I was just like, go, Caleb, run for the scramble for the first. What are we doing? And he's just standing there. And I think, he tried to play from the pocket a little bit too much. But going back to what Robert was saying about like, there's really nothing that you can say outside of the left tackle position. Like, Bears fans, beware. There's no excuses this year. Like, and I'm not saying that Caleb Williams needs to develop into Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen this year, but we need to see a marginal improvement because the reality is this offense, like player for player, is a lot better than a lot of other offenses. And it's Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson's job to elevate that. Now, I do think Caleb Williams is someone who, if you put it in front of him, he will work. Like, he will do the work. And I think that's where Jared Goff and Ben Johnson really hit it off is they both sat together and just worked. And I think that can happen with Caleb Williams. I think he's the type of player that wants that. So I do think that Caleb Williams, all the weapons, Ben Johnson. Now, who knows? Ben Johnson may be a horrible head coach, but the reality is we know the offense should be pretty good. So if we don't see marginal improvements from Caleb, I think there's going to be a lot of pressure going into year 3.
Caleb Williams wants to do.
I honestly think Caleb Williams wants to play more like Jared Goff.
Really?
When you watch Caleb Williams last year, there are some moments where, everyone's busy, right? The guys, it's hard to watch all 32 teams. But some people talking about Caleb Williams last year and attributing him hanging onto the ball and the high time to throw and things like that as him trying to be a creator in playoff schedule didn't watch the Bears play. He was just standing in the pocket. He wanted to be a guy who played from the pocket. Mm-hmm. And so giving him options, breaking case for emergency type stuff, giving him just everything at his disposal to play at from that space, I think that's how he wants to play. So I don't think that there's this misalignment between how a Ben Johnson quarterback wants to play and how Caleb Williams wants to play. I think that's kind of been a misnomer as part of this process.
I think that's such a great point because I remember him just being almost like he wouldn't get out of the pocket. And then it would be coverage sacks where he would just get smothered and rolled over because he's like, damn it, I am standing in this pocket because this is what I want to be. I don't want everybody to think of me as Justin Fields.
I think that's right. And I think that giving him options and opportunities to just play a little bit faster, I think that's the most important thing. It's like, listen, you go 1 to 2 here and then you take off.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're construed as a scrambling quarterback at the end of all of this. We want to be a good offense. So I think just having him play quicker, not necessarily having him change the way he wants to play, that's the most important element of this.
This segment is brought to you by AlmostFreeTeeth.com. Saved on dental implants today. We were talking to Robert Mays of the Athletic Football Show. And I think one of the things in your studies of the NFL that adds to this is a key that we talk about when it comes to how Ben Johnson sees Caleb Williams succeeding. And that is the EPA concept. Mm-hmm. What can you tell us about that, where when Ben Johnson talks about it, what we might see on the field?
I think it's, again, run after catch opportunities are a huge part of this. Sack mitigation is a huge part of this. I think that when he's saying that stuff, what I've learned this offseason is that I don't think he's doing a lot of this by accident. I think that he's saying a lot of things that are designed to send a message. That clip you guys played before we even started here about everyone should be uncomfortable here. And after they picked Luther Burden, essentially saying, like, this is a notice to people who are in the building. Like he's done a lot of that this offseason. And when I hear him talk about the EPA stuff, to me, that is the difference, and comparing it to turnovers, right? He's done that multiple times where turnover differential used to be the biggest driver. Now you look at the difference in passing efficiency, that's what it actually is. I think the reason he's saying that is the Bears had an offense last year that didn't turn the ball over very often, especially throwing it, but they took an astronomical amount of sacks. The value lost on sacks in the NFL in any given year is significantly more than the value lost on interceptions. Not all interceptions are created equal. So if you're throwing 5 interceptions over the course of the year, but you're taking 55 sacks, that's not a good thing. Like in the end, that's actually going to be worse than if you were a little bit looser with the ball over the course of a season.
And Caleb didn't turn the ball over a ton in college. Like he was not an interception prone quarterback. But when you know the history of Matt Eberflus, even with Justin Fields, where what was it? He wanted to be a 200, what is it? 200 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Like that doesn't breed development for a young guy, right? And he was so into don't turn the ball over. Just let us win the game with the defense. Okay, well, like sometimes this is what you get. And I'm not saying that Caleb is absolved of all blame, but the reality is like if you watch Dennis Allen's press conference on the defense, he said, I'd rather have to pull the reins back on a guy than have to whoop him to get him to go. And that is such a refreshing take, in my opinion, for Bears fans. That is not something we've heard. We want good role models who will listen to the coaches. That is exactly what we've been told for the last couple of years. And obviously you want good players and you want to listen to coaches, but this is a violent game. You want some dog in those guys. At least I do. I don't know. And that's what I think you get with Burden and Shamar Turner and even Loveland. Like Loveland likes to talk.
5 would be a 13 sack improvement.
Yes.
Yeah. So we were looking at the numbers last week, Grody and I, about the sacks, and he was amazed at how few sacks that Jared Goff took because obviously he's not a mobile quarterback, but he was getting the ball out on time. And I think that's the main thing I'm looking at because that's why I asked you that question about what Ben Johnson wants for Caleb Williams is because I just want him to get rid of the ball. And it seems like with these weapons now in place, and you talked about the Eli Whitney interchangeable parts kind of thing, he should be able to have an idea going to the line, what exactly is going to happen, what his bailouts are. All of that should be settled. I'm just wondering how much of a learning curve there will be for that. How deep into the season will we get before he truly feels comfortable in a Ben Johnson offense?
It may be
Before Robert answers, I want to say this. I believe it's actually going to be pretty easy for Caleb Williams to wipe the slate of last year because of how much of a shit show it was. And I don't think Shane Waldron was a very good teacher. So I don't think he put in a lot of stock to what they taught him. Like, I feel like there was a lot of, after they got fired, it's basically the organization admitting, like, we didn't hire the right guy. Like, what he was teaching was wrong. And I think my thing is, like, I think Caleb Williams is a smart enough individual to be like, you know what? I've done this. Last year was a shit show. Let's just wipe it. And it's easier said than done. Obviously, he's going to have scars from last year. It happens. But I think the reality is we need to look at it like, I think Caleb Williams is approaching this as basically year one.
Wow. This isn't something that's going to happen immediately. Even guys that are really, really good offensive coordinators and good quarterbacks, it can take a little bit. My favorite example ever, because of what they did in year 2, and it was historically good, is looking back at like the 2015 Falcons. Kyle Shanahan is arguably the best offensive play caller in the league. Matt Ryan is if not a Hall of Fame quarterback, then a Hall of Very Good quarterback who won an MVP award. In 2015, if you go back and you look at those numbers, they were average. They were like the 15th best offense in the league. Like there's a learning curve with this stuff. And I think Ben Johnson has been good pretty much right away. Like I actually remember the back half of that 2021 season, watching that offense in Detroit and being like, they're doing some interesting stuff here. This is actually pretty fun. Like he was one of the guys I was really excited to talk to that next offseason when he was going into his first full season. I think he's good. I think he's proven to be good, but there's always going to be an adjustment period, especially for a young quarterback in a situation like this.
This is why 8 and 9, 7 and 10, these are the things I'm looking at because I could see them getting off to first of all, the schedule is ridiculous, but I could also just see them getting off to a slow start and then picking up momentum on the back half, and people might be disappointed, but I'm like, it's probably going to take more than a year to compete in the way that we want the Bears to compete.
We'll see what happens.
I don't necessarily disagree with Marshall here. I think my main thing is I don't think they're going to start slow. Like, I think this team is really hungry. I think they have a very capable coaching staff. Like, again, I know we got Ben Johnson, and he is going to do wonders for the offense, hopefully. But people really forget how good of a defensive coordinator that Dennis Allen is. Like, Dennis Allen, okay, forget about his time as head coach. Like, he is a top 5, top 10 defensive play caller in the league, and Ben Johnson is a top 5 offensive guy. Like, they have the talent and they have the coaches. Like, these are not first-time coaches doing what they're doing. Like, Ben Johnson is the offensive coordinator. Yes, it's his first time as a head coach. Dennis Allen has been a DC for a very long time, and they have good players on both sides. So while I understand that this is a new defense, new offense, and every team is going to be learning new things when they have new coaches, this does not strike to me as, yes, they're going to be teaching them techniques, fundamentals, all that. But like, this isn't like year one with Matt Eberflus, you know? This isn't year one of a rebuild. Like, this Bears team is ready to win now. And I think the players know that and they want that.
Happens. You know, there are times where that's true. There are other times where you just have sort of this transformative presence come in and everything changes. You know, going back to Jared Goff again, think about what Sean McVay was in year one when he went to LA. I mean, they went from the worst offense in the NFL in 2017, like historically bad, to a top 5 unit. Jaden Daniels last year. There are examples of this where it does click pretty fast. I think that it's just a wide range of outcomes here. If you told me that they were the 17th best offense in the league and that they finished 7-10, I'd be like, okay. I mean, I can understand that. I don't think that is a deal breaker if you're trying to build over multiple years. If you told me they were the 8th best offense in the league and they won 11 games, I would believe that. Like, I just think that there are a lot of different paths here that are on the table.
I love it, Robert Mays, because I said 10 last year, and I feel like that's still very much on the table.
They got halfway there, Layla.
If they have a losing season and things are going in the right direction where it feels like it's sustainable and it can go to the next level, then fine, right? I mean, like Steve Rosenblum posed the question on one of the Saturday shows. If the Bears are 9-8 and don't make the playoffs, is that okay? I'm like, yeah, absolutely, that's okay.
Yeah, it's year one of a new coach.
It's at year one of a new coach. And have you seen what has been going on with the Bears? The Chicago Bears have had 2 11-game losing streaks in the last 3 years, man.
Okay, just to finish it off, I do think that the Bears need to win at least 8 games. And I think that's okay. Honestly, a very successful season to me would be the 7-seed playoff seed. Like, make the playoffs, first-year head coach, new players are in the building, year 3 of Caleb Williams next year. You load up at pass rusher and offense and left tackle if you don't get it figured out in the draft next year. And then the sky's the limit, guys. Like, I think this was a great discussion between the 670 The Score guys and Robert Mays. I think very realistic, level-headed expectations. I would love to see the Bears win 10 games next year. But if they finish 9-8 and get the 7th seed in the playoffs, I'll be very happy. The Bears have a very, very hard schedule this year, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a comment. Be sure to subscribe. We'll be back with more content on the Bear Cave.